Hey class, this is Miss Cat, and today we're going to be talking about how to set up a Unity scene, especially one that we're going to be using for class. So as you open up Unity, this is probably going to be what it opens up to you, and this should be actually what it opens up to you. So we have projects, we have Learn, and so in Learn, this is where you can actually learn about how to use Unity stuff, but we're really focusing on projects because we're making a new project. So in here, I have a few projects that I've already made. We're not going to worry about those. I'm going to go up here and I'm going to click the New button. So when I click New, it should pull this up right here. So project name, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to name this setup, just so that I have something that I can refer back to with you guys. I'm going to always, uppercase the next word, and I always make sure it's a run-on word. Now I know that sounds weird, but Unity has a lot of things that it does not like spaces in between, and this is just the easiest way to do it. So on location, I'm just going to throw this on my desktop, but what I just did is I clicked the little dots on the side, and that opens this up. I'm going to throw it on my desktop, so I'm just going to say I want it in my desktop, press open. And what that does is it says, okay, when I save this, the location will be on the desktop. Recognize person, ignore this, cat nunya, that's what I call it, and template. So we're going to be working in 2D, so make sure you re-click this and click 2D. So we want 2D here. It's just something we want. You can enable Unity Analytics, you can turn it off, it doesn't really matter there. We're not working with an asset package, so we don't want to add any. I'm just going to hit create project. All right, so now it's importing everything. It has to import all the assets that it just comes with and all these other things. So as it's opening, you can see it's going through a ton of stuff right here. It has to get all these to even make the program work. All right, so as you can see, it didn't take too long. And based off of, the example video you should have watched about how everything is set up, it should look similar to this. Things might be a little bit different, but it should be about this, how this is set up. So right off the bat, how we talked about assets, and that's anything we want to put in our game. It has already created a scene folder. It has our sample scene in here. That's just what it calls the scene that we're in. You can always rename the scene if you want, keep it sample scene. It really doesn't matter at this point. I'm just going to leave it a sample scene because I'm not going to be changing that anytime soon. So I'm going to go into my assets. And the first thing I want to do is I know that I already have a sprite that I want to add, which is a 2D picture, and sprites in particular have to be PNGs. So with a PNG, that's a file type that allows for transparency. When you watch the tile map video and stuff like that, or tile sheets, it'll talk more about it, but it has to be a sprite. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click over here. I'm going to hit create folder, and I'm going to call this sprites, if I can spell. There we go. Sprites folder. So now I've got a scene folder and a sprites folder, and I'm going to do create. I'm going to create another folder called scripts. And the reason that I've created these folders is because you always want to make sure your project is as clean as possible. So when I actually go into my sprites, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another folder, and I'm going to call this player. Now some of you might be going, why are you just creating another folder? You just put it in here. Well, eventually this folder would be full of world sprites, character sprites, enemy sprites, and all that. And you want to keep them kind of put together. And so you don't want everything just jumbled in a mess because it's going to make it impossible to find what you're looking for. So that's kind of why I do that. And you can always go and you can click on this assets and it'll bring you back to your main menu and stuff like that. My scripts folder has nothing in here too. Scripts is the same way. As I start making scripts, I might want to make, a player script area. I might want to make an enemy script area, so that way I can grab the scripts I need and it doesn't get really super messy. But the first things we're going to talk about is just adding, how to add, any object, anything we really want to put in here. And we'll go over how to add a script in a minute. First, I want to add a sprite. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click into sprites and I'm going to click into player. And in here, I'm going to right click. I'm going to hit import new asset. So in importing a new asset, it's not me creating something new, but I can go and I can search for what I want. So I'm going to go to my desktop, and I want this mushroom guy. So this mushroom guy, he's just going to be my PNG. He's going to be my my player. So I go ahead and I click on that. Now, as you can see, I suddenly have all this inspector type stuff over here. So I've got sprite, 2D, UI, sprite mode single, which is what we want, pixels per unit, sure, fine. At the moment, I don't have any problems with this. It's already reading it as a sprite, which is awesome. Sometimes it might read it as like a normal or as a default, which is a type of texture. We don't want that. We want it to be sprite. So I'm going to hit apply. That should be fine anyway. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to click, and I can either do one of two things to put my player in the scene. And so the first is I can either drag him into my hierarchy, which puts him in the middle, and he's huge. I'm going to have to size him down. I already knew that, don't worry. And I'm going to press Command Z to undo that, or I can put him in my scene like this. So either way works. When I put him in my hierarchy, what that does is it centers him. 0, 0, like right up here, 0, 0, 0. Whereas if I were to place him, he might be, way out of position, 1 point something, I don't know. So I'm going to head and I'm going to put him there, and I'm going to grab my scale tool, and I'm just going to scale him down. As you can see in my view over here, this, remember as we talked about, this is my game view, so this is what my players are seeing. So not much is there. It's not really crazy. It's just a mushroom. And right now, my mushroom can't do anything. It can't move. There's nothing for it to move with. So it's pretty basic. So while working with this, I want to add a few things because I'm like, man, I just want to see how this all works. And so as we go through adding a few things, I'm going to talk about what these are. And so on my mushroom guy, I'm always going to add on a player. That is, not just my mushroom guy. On any player, I'm always going to have at least two things when it comes to being a 2D play thing. So I'm going to add something, and so this, we can go through. We have this whole components list over in our inspector, right? So in our inspector, I've clicked on my mushroom guy. I come over here to my inspector, and I click Add Component. And so in my components, I have a lot of different things I can choose, but there's this specific thing called Physics 2D, and this is going to be one thing that we're going to use a ton. So I'm going to click on that. And here I have like box colliders, capsule colliders, things that don't really make sense to me right now. But as I scroll down here, I have, the first thing I want to add. And so this is called a rigid body 2D. And a rigid body 2D doesn't really make a lot of sense whenever you first hear it. You're like, yeah, you have no idea what that is. But what this does is it allows us to add physics. And so you're like, what's the big deal about physics? Well, if I have a side-scroller game and I want my character to be able to jump, be able to fall, all those types of things, I need gravity. And so what this does, it allows me to have gravity. But I can turn my gravity up so he falls a lot faster. I can turn it down. I can have it at 0, and so he just floats. So why do I need a rigid body? Well, when I get into coding, we're going to be using our rigid body 2D to actually help us code. So as we want to code movement and stuff like that, we need to have this applied. Just something you need to know. Put it on your player. It's okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another component. I'm going to go back into my Physics 2D. And now I'm going to, or actually before I do that, we'll add it first. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add what's called a capsule collider. And so as you can see over here, now I have this little green circle around here. And that's my capsule collider. So if I play this at the moment, and I press play and I watch my game, my character just falls, right? Because I've added this rigid body 2D. So that allows my character to have this gravity on it. Well, I've added a capsule collider, and I kind of got ahead of myself there, but what a capsule collider or any type of collider does, and remember we're in 2D, so it needs to be collider 2D, it allows us to actually hit something and stop, right? It's as if my hand is on the table. I can't press into the table, like I can't go through the table, I can't go through a wall and stuff like that. So that's a little bit of what it allows us to do. Now the next thing I'm going to go is I'm going to do, and I'm going to come up here to create. And so in my hierarchy, when I press create, it has all of these different objects or options. And so there's create empty, there's 2D like sprite. So we've got a sprite over here, tile map, which we'll get into in another video, and all these good things. But the one thing I'm really concerned about is I don't have anything for my character to collide with, right? So he's just going to go through the floor. Well, at the moment, I don't need another sprite necessarily. I don't need a tile map. I need just some kind of floor, and it can be invisible. So to do that, I'm going to create an empty. So by creating empty, it's an empty game object. This game object, and it's called game object right here, has nothing in it, right? Nothing whatsoever is in this game object. It doesn't have anything. It just has a transform, which means it's basically blank. Think of like a speck of dust that does nothing. That is basically what a blank game object is. So I want to go ahead and I want to turn this into a floor so that my character will, instead of falling straight through, will hit the floor and will stop. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go add component. I'm going to travel my way down to physics 2D. And since this isn't a character, I don't need a rigid body, right? I don't need this floor to move or anything else. So I'm just going to put on a really basic box collider. And so as you can see here, before I put on a capsule collider, this is a box collider, circle colliders, those are all fine. The reason I do box is it's just a flat edge. The reason I did a capsule collider before is it really, holds the shape of my character. So with my box collider added, it's going to be a 1:1 scale. I'm like, man, my character's still not going to go all the way through here. Well, at the top, I've got these different things. So I've already been using one of these. This is movement right up here. And I can click, I can move. The hotkey for that is W. So W is just, do this. I've got a rotation. So I can rotate this little box collider. I just press Command Z to undo everything I do. And then I can, size it up. So this is what we're going to be doing is we're going to practice scale. And so right before I get into that, once again, W is movement, E is rotate, and R is resize, basically. So I think of that as resizing. It's just sizing. So as you can see, as I scale that up, this changes right here, the number of scale right here. That's okay. We're just scaling it up. It's fine. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press play now. And as we can see, my character hits something and doesn't move here. Now, in my scene, I can actually see that it's hitting this, empty game object with the box collider on it. And let's say I don't really like it being called game object because I'm going to lose that really fast. So I can rename things just by coming up here, and I can call this, floor. So I'll call that floor for now. And this is kind of the basics of what we're talking about. So I have, my floor, I have my character. I'm pretty set for now, so I'm happy with this. I know it's not crazy. I know it's not great. I only want to show you one more thing. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my assets again. And now I'm going to make a script. And this is, I know, one last thing for you to learn. I'm not going to teach you actually how to script yet. This is just that you will understand the setup. So in my scripts, I could once again make a bunch of other folders, put a script folder in there, or not a script folder, a player folder, and put all my scripts in there for that player in particular, but I'm not too worried about it. Remember, this is just me showing you guys how to set things up. So I'm going to right click over here, and we're going to click Create a C# script. So C# is the language we'll be using. I have a few videos that are up there. I've given you a link to the Unity. I've given you a PowerPoint so you can learn this. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me about it, but we're going to be using C# script. And so this is important. Whenever you make a C# script, you have to have no spaces. And what I mean is when you are naming this, if I want to name it player movement, I cannot have this little space here. The reason is it breaks the code. It literally cannot find it. And if you try and apply this to Mushroom or anything else, it will not use your code. So no matter what, if you make a new code, you have to make sure there are no spaces in it. So now when I click enter, player movement has no spaces. This is good. If I look right here into my code, it says public class player movement. This is exactly what I want. It's named the exact same thing. It's awesome. So that's it for this video. We'll be getting into how to create or how to actually code movement for our character. And then later on, we'll actually talk about, how to add a sprite sheet and make the character animate. But next video is how we actually create movement for this character. So I will see you guys next time.